So hello and welcome to everyone. I think it will be good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zones. Thank you so much for joining us for the next 45 minutes for our webinar on pioneering accessible advertising. So I'd love to start by giving you an audio description of myself. So I'll start by letting you know that I am Katy Talikowska, and I'm in the wonderful and enviable position of being the CEO of the Valuable 500. I am a white woman who is tantalizingly close to 50. And today I am wearing a pale blue denim shirt that I'm regretting not having ironed a little bit more. I have shoulder length, blondie brown hair, and behind me I have a blurred background of my home office, which is slightly messy, and by virtue of blurring it, I didn't have to tidy it up too much. So that is me, and also my pronouns are she and her. Just in terms of a little bit of housekeeping before I introduce you to our fabulous panelists, we're joined by Joanne. Thank you, Joanne, who is generating human generated captions for us today. Also, if we have time, we will be allowing for some questions. Please drop the questions in the chat and I will moderate those at the end. If we don't get time to answer all your questions, then we will do our best to respond to you directly via email after the session. So thank you very much. So as you're aware, I'm joined today by three fantastic panelists from the worlds of media, inclusion and accessibility consultancy, advertising and marketing. And over the next just shy of 45 minutes, we will be talking about the importance of pioneering accessible advertising and how that also links in terms of accurate and authentic representation of people with disabilities. So without further ado, we have Dr. Shani Dhanda, who is a multi-award-winning disability inclusion and accessibility consultant. She's a broadcaster, and last year, and we're delighted to have you with us, Shani, thank you. She was named by the Shaw Trust as the most influential disabled person in the UK. So thank you, Shani, for joining us. I'll hand over to you in a moment to introduce yourself as well. Also, we are joined by Matt Thomas, who is a senior brand and media director for Europe at Procter & Gamble. We're very lucky to partner very closely with Procter & Gamble, who are one of our iconic companies. And last but absolutely not least, the equally brilliant Henrietta Corley, who is a senior business director at AMV BBDO, an agency that's very close to my heart because I was lucky enough to spend best part of 15 years there. So welcome, Shani, Matt, and Henrietta. Thank you so much. And if I may, I'll just hand over to you, Shani, to perhaps give an audio description of yourself and introduce yourself in your own words.
Sure. Thanks, Katy. Really happy to be here. So I'm Shani Dhanda. I'm a South Asian disabled woman. I have a short stature, but I'm sitting down at the moment, so it's not really obvious. I have long, dark brown hair, and I'm wearing a printed orange, green, pink long sleeve top today, and I'm in a room with a white background. And my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Matt.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, and great to be here today, Katy. So my name is Matt. I'm a white male. I have short brown hair and brown eyes, and I'm wearing a blue stripy shirt with a white background, which is much more boring than Katy's, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Hen, over to you.
Thank you, Katy, and thank you to the Valuable 500 for having me here. My name's Henrietta. I go by the pronouns of she, her. I am a white woman in her 30s. I have short brown hair. I'm wearing a white shirt today, and I'm against an obnoxiously pink background.
I think it looks beautiful. Thank you very much, guys. Okay, so I think if we kick off, I'm going to start with you, Shani, if that's okay. So July is a really important and special month, and despite the terrible weather we're having here in English, there's lots of sunshine and positivity because it is Disability Pride Month. And whilst arguably every day should be a day to celebrate and being proud of being disabled, it is obviously a very important month. And I think happily we're seeing a lot of really exciting progress in the worlds of sort of inclusion and accessibility. But I think we would all fundamentally agree that not enough brands are getting it right all of the time. From your perspective, Shani, why do you think that is?
Thank you. And it's such a great question. And I also want to start by saying that it is Disability Pride Month, but it's really hard to feel proud of an identity when we are still fighting for representation. And just to put into just to put this into a bit of context, we know that 17% of the world experience disability, yet various reports suggest that globally disabled people feature in less than 2% of global ads. So, we're so far off from getting the true and accurate representation and portrayals that we want and are desperately needing. But I think there's lots of different factors as to why this is happening. I think the first one is a major lack of understanding and awareness, because many decision makers or people that are in the industry don't fully understand the nuances of disability. Maybe it's not their lived experience, maybe they don't know any disabled people, or just can't really bring that experience to life because they're not collaborating with disabled people as well. So that then leads us to really superficial stereotypes and portrayals. And then if the disabled people are involved, whether they are, creatives or perhaps in a way of a focus group, it's often too late. And so then, any suggestions that are made, it's, well, we haven't got the money to do that now, or it's too far in the line to do that, or we don't have the time. So that massively leads to a lack of authenticity. But I think there's another massive barrier, and a lot of people are scared to get it wrong. I think there's a really big fear. And it's natural, people don't want to offend, people obviously don't want to make mistakes. And then that results in brands and people just avoiding the topic altogether, or playing it so safe that it's representation that is overdone and overdone and overdone, and it's a bit boring. And lastly, I think another factor is disability as a topic is seen as too risky. And that's why some brands may prioritize campaigns that are perceived to be a bit safer, or that are just perhaps seen to be way more profitable. But I just want to say that that's a myth, because we are a huge community. We have £13 trillion in spending power. You're leaving money on the table. I'm going to pause there.
Yeah. So Shani, just to build on that, when you were talking about it's perceived as being too risky, does that link back to the point you were making about fear of getting it wrong? Because what you've clearly showed there is that there is no, not only is there no risk to the brand from a business perspective, there is actually a huge growth opportunity. So when you talk about risk, do you think more about the fear of getting it wrong?
Yeah, the fear of getting it wrong, and then the fear of brands being called out for getting it wrong. But I just want to explain that everybody has a really unique and individual way of experiencing disability. What might be my lived experience is going to be completely different. So there is really no way to get it wrong. Everyone has so many vast experiences. We aren't a monolith in our community. We are, communities within communities. So that's what I mean by getting it wrong. But it's just getting more comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, because I think if this work makes you feel a bit uncomfortable, it's actually a signal that you're on the right track.
Getting it right. Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, again, I suppose it shouldn't sound groundbreaking, but just the importance of bringing in the voices of the disabled community at every single step of the journey, that's always going to help. So thank you, Shani. So Matt, credit to Procter & Gamble, because I think one of the best sort of steps forward that we've seen within the industry working towards accessibility and inclusive and authentic representation is through the setting up of the Ad Alliance. So huge credit to Procter & Gamble for having done that. Can you talk a little bit more about what the Ad Alliance is and why it's so important that brands take part?
Absolutely, no, super happy to. I think, fundamentally, the Ad Alliance is all about bringing advertisers together as an industry to make a change in terms of how we drive more accessible advertising within the industry in which we work. And I think it's important to state why that's important. And it's important because simply it's the right thing to do as a starting point, right? Today, as an industry, we're excluding up to about 15% of consumers in Europe from our advertising, those who either have visual impairments or hearing impairments, where we are almost actively making a choice to not include them in advertising and the way in which they consume it. And I think Shani just talked brilliantly about lived experiences. Actually, this is one example where you can, as someone without a disability, actually live that experience. So actually, I would encourage you all at some point to, next time you're watching a TV ad break, close your eyes and just listen to the adverts. And really, do you really truly understand what is going on in that advert? There are many, many adverts you'll notice that don't even say the brand name throughout their advertising, right? So, you are actively choosing to exclude those consumers from your advertising by not enabling things like audio description or closed captioning within our advertising. And I wanted to just touch upon another thing that Shani mentioned about, how there's no business risk to this, right? It's exactly the opposite, right? We talked about this previously, but we talk about ROI now as really that return on inclusivity going forward. It's a really small investment to actually make your advertising accessible to others through audio description or closed captioning. And that small investment can drive huge incremental reach. I mean, if you think about how much it costs to audio describe an ad versus the extra, 5-10% of consumers that you can reach authentically through that advert, that's huge brand growth for very, very small investment and a brilliant opportunity to connect with a group of consumers that you're currently not connecting with. And so if I bring it back to P&G and why we were so passionate about driving this forward within the industry and creating the Ad Alliance, really it's because we want to be both a force for growth for the company, but a force for good for society at the same time. And those two things are not, mutually independent. They can absolutely come together and work together.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, we talk a lot about what's right for businesses, what's right for society, and where business goes, society will follow. So I think there is a business and a moral imperative on big corporations to be a force for good. And that isn't just a sort of an adjunct or a sort of an add-on. It actually sits at the heart of driving the business forward, being more inclusive, opening up. You were talking there, Shani, about the untapped market of 13 trillion. It should be an absolute no-brainer. So, Matt, just back to you again. In terms of perhaps the last year, in addition to the great work you've been doing through the Ad Alliance, any other particular sort of achievements and sort of initiatives from P&G that you're really proud of that you would share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I would caveat the things that we're proud of with the starting point of we're absolutely on a journey here, right? And I don't want to come across as if we are perfect because we're not, right? And we have a huge amount of progress still to make as a company. But there are things that we're proud of, particularly some of the change that we've been able to help drive within the industry more broadly. A couple of examples, I'd say. This year we've been working alongside ISBA and the Ad Alliance and many of our partners to actually change things like closed captioning within Clearcast, where previously closed captioning was an opt-in when you uploaded a TV copy into Clearcast and then tried to stream it through onto TV. It is now actually an opt-out. So brands have to actively choose not to close caption their adverts before they go on air, which I think really changes the mindset, right? Yeah. in terms of inclusivity, which I'm really, really proud of, and particularly, a couple of members of my team who have been driving that hard. The other thing I would highlight is, we've been doing a lot of work with many of the big media owners, but we've made really great progress this year with Meta in particular, whereby we've now, with Meta, enabled through AI actually audio description and closed captioning as an option that you can turn on to every single one of your ads, just literally at the click of a button. So again, trying to reduce some of that friction and make it significantly easier to make your advertising more accessible to consumers. So those are probably a couple of real practical examples in the industry where we're trying to help drive change for everyone, not just for P&G. Yeah,
fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so Hen, over to you. Obviously, you're here as our agency representative. You're a client lead working on big sort of global brands. In terms of when you perhaps first get that client brief in, when you're sort of opening up to have those conversations about being inclusive and representative, talking about accessibility, how receptive do you find that most of your clients and the brands that you oversee are?
It's interesting. I do find that the first conversation does tend to be easy. There is an openness, there is a eagerness to understand more. And, we tend to have brands and clients that are really open to this consideration. But what's lacking is the action or the intent to follow through. So we find that the thought or the consideration is more overwhelming than the action itself. So and often we try to have these conversations before a brief does hit. To Shani's point, it's making sure that we are speaking to clients and are identifying opportunities before a brief will come to us. But it is really daunting for a brand. There is a lot to consider. There's the stakeholder management, the meetings, the pitches, the business cases, all those types of things which tend to overwhelm and cloud the ability to then say, right, I need to do this, and to be able to break it down. And again, there's this fear of, what happens if you get it wrong? And what happens if you get called out for being wrong? And like so many other things that are worth doing, this fear can lead to inaction. So it is really important, and what we find our role here at AMV, and also with our consultancy AMV Open, it's important for us to break it down. So you don't need to do everything all at once. We consider how you can make one thing more impactful, one thing more accessible, and represent more people in more authentic and meaningful ways as well. So this can sometimes mean it might be looking at the briefs we receive to spot the opportunity, whether it is in accessibility or if it's more in representation. It could be looking at like segmentation and buyer analysis as well, to actually understand what is the cost of this missed opportunity, and therefore what is that return on investment, or and return on inclusion, as Matt has coined, which I love. And it could be that it's more around ensuring a truly diverse research group when testing creative and at the right time. Which also, there's been so many times where we've done research or studies and you find more insights and more stories that haven't been uncovered, or they've been left unheard so far, and can genuinely create cut through for your brand and create really exciting and brilliant creative. For us at AMV, Open Inclusion have been an absolutely integral partner to our inclusivity journey, and they have helped us be able to break it down for our clients, which has been imperative. And something that they have spoken a lot about is prioritizing. So you can't be inclusive to everyone. So it's being able to start by identifying which minority groups are most likely to engage with your brand or your product, and start from there, because that's also the biggest business opportunity as well. So I guess to your point, Katy, no, it's not easy. It's not necessarily easy. But again, if it was, I don't know if it would be any good or if it would be worth it.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so what I'm hearing there, which I think is really encouraging, is that because interestingly, I think when I was working in advertising sort of moons ago, it was, you were having to make the case in the first place. Clients were, I have to be honest, clients were not as receptive as they wanted, as I would have liked them to be. But you do find in the main that clients do come to you with a willingness and an openness. So they don't need the convincing on the why. It's perhaps just the guidance around the how, and overcoming that fear, perhaps, as you say, Shani, being to a degree just comfortable with the uncomfortable, knowing that there will be bumps in the road, people are going to get it wrong. But the biggest mistake, the only mistake really, is not trying and not having that conversation. Does that tally with your experience, Hen?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, it's not waiting for them to come to you for a conversation. It's you being proactive and going to them, because yes, they will be open to have the conversation, but they might not have the proactivity to come to us first about it.
Okay. So Shani, from your perspective, is there anything else that you can do to help perhaps tool Hen Up and other advertising people and marketeers on the call? Is there anything else you would say, any sort of key killer points to really sort of hammer home the benefit and the advantage, just in case there are still marketeers out there who are slightly on the fence and thinking, is it worth it? Because I am concerned about the risk. I am concerned about getting it wrong. So perhaps I'll push it to the side and focus on something else. What would you say if you were in those client briefing meetings?
Yeah, look, there are so many benefits, and I think they always outweigh any negatives, all these feelings of fear. And by the way, I've worked with hundreds of brands, and if you asked me to do something that I had no expertise on, if you asked me to do something that I didn't have any knowledge on that topic, I also too would feel really scared and would feel really fearful. So one, it's just accepting that that's just a natural part of the process and the feeling, but then it's diving into the community authentically, because brands have the power to literally shape the way lives and perceptions are viewed and seen, and how communities are treated. That's how powerful brands are, and their unmatched influence drives awareness and change like nothing else. As a disabled person, of course, I'm waiting for my government to do things and to make changes, but brands can do it way quicker and influence parts of societies in ways that, governments can't, for example. And 73% of consumers are touched by disability. So what I mean by that is that takes into account the emotional loyalty that somebody will have if you support the disability community. Maybe they're a family member, that maybe they're a friend, and we're a very loyal community as well. If we see a brand doing something really well, we're going to share that. And I think inclusive advertising appeals to a much more broader audience anyway, and we are more likely to support those brands, especially the next generation. And it's lastly, positive publicity as well. Brands that champion inclusivity can absolutely enjoy the benefit of great PR just by doing the right thing.
Yeah, so true. It's so true. And then that return on investment, that return on inclusion becomes disproportionate above and beyond your sort of your owned media. It's then your earned media, as it were, as well. So
yeah.
Okay, so Shani and Hen, and then we'll come on to Matt, but I'm just going to ask Shani and Hen, are there let's be positive and let's give that good PR to brands who we think are doing it well. Could you both give me, and I'm sorry, Matt, they're not allowed to say P&G, we'll come on to you, Mo, but can you give me some examples of brands that you think are getting it right, or at least beginning to move in the right direction? Perhaps if we start with you, Shani, and then I'll ask Hen.
Yeah, and a campaign and an advert that I'm absolutely loving was Cadbury's Fingers. And it's called Sign with Fingers Big and Small, and they partnered with the National Deaf Children's Society. And in this ad, we see a really young girl telling the camera in BSL how she feels excluded from conversations. But to highlight this, some of the subtitles words on the screen are covered, like the kettle's boiling and the steam covers the subtitles. So it's in a really authentic way. I just think it's so clever, so simple, and brings home the point so beautifully. But of course, you've got that product placement in there as well. I think it's so well done.
Yeah, it's a fantastic example. How about you, Hen? Any brands you're in awe of who are doing it well?
Yeah, I think a recent example is the Channel 4 work for the Paris Paralympics. So quite contextual, but it is really beautiful, authentic work that highlights the unrelenting forces of sport. These forces of sport like gravity and friction that really doesn't care, what you look like, who you are, where you've come from, and they affect everybody. And it's a beautiful example of craft and creative, and it shows the impact that you can have when you do authentically represent people.
Yeah, I'm very pleased that you brought that up. I think if I can add to that, because I agree with you, I think it's the most phenomenally powerful message, and from from a sort of a craft perspective as well, just the way it's been executed, the sound designers, etc. It's phenomenal. What I also like about Channel 4, and credit to them, is, and to a degree this goes back to the point that you were making, Shani, about perhaps brands sometimes trying and getting it wrong. And if you think about the original Superhumans Wanted spot in 2016, which was the catalyst for their Diversity in Advertising Award, and forgive me, I talk about my work on Maltesers way too much, forgive me, but that was a real catalyst. And I remember at the time, as we were doing research, and there's a disability activist, Stella Young, who had a reaction to this sort of trope of superhuman, and she said, I am not your inspiration porn. Now, under no circumstances am I criticizing Channel 4, because I understand their thinking at the time and what they were doing, but I think the sort of the fact that they've learned, they've grown, they've understood, they've taken feedback on board, and 8 years later they come out with a spot which is so spot on for now, having thought about how disability representation needs to evolve. Because Shani, you spoke at the beginning about the tropes, and very often you hear people talk about it's either the victim to be pitied, or it's the sort of the superhuman to be put on the pedestal. And actually, you talk about individual journeys, unique perspectives. It's about taking that human first approach and just understanding that we are all people at the end of the day, and we will always strive for the same things. We'll cry at the same things. We'll laugh at the same things. So I think having that sort of universal experience, which through a sporting context comes through in the current spot for Channel 4, I think is fantastic. So
I think what else is added to that is, Channel 4 has been on this journey, but they have prioritized listening, and listening is probably one of the most underrated and underutilized tool in our industry, but is also arguably the most powerful. And through obviously their diversity in advertising work, but also through this latest campaign as well, they've actually gone out, sought stories, they've spoken to people, they've understood where they've come from, understood what their experiences are, and that it is so clear and so apparent in the effectiveness of this work. It really is very powerful, their whole journey and the output that has come from it.
Yeah, thank you. Couldn't agree more. So Matt, you spoke before with real humility, speaking about the fact that you're on a journey and you've got lots of successes, but you haven't been getting everything right, without putting a downer on the conversation, but also passionately and personally believing that you can learn as much from those challenges as you can from those successes. Would you be okay to talk through perhaps some of the barriers, some of the challenges that you faced internally when it comes to driving accessibility at P&G?
Yeah, I think there are internal and external barriers, right? I think if I look at some of the internal barriers, I would say the number one barrier is awareness of the issue, right? Particularly for many of those people working on the brands that don't have a lived experience, right? Then it's not necessarily something that immediately comes to mind for them that they need to solve for. And so how we attempt to raise more awareness of the importance of accessibility within advertising and inclusivity within advertising within our organization is a critical barrier to overcome, and definitely one that we are still on a journey. And I'd say the only solution in that scenario is to keep talking it at all levels. So it's not about the most senior person talking about it all the time. It's actually about how from someone just joining the organization fresh in, that they understand from the start that this is an important part of how we go about our brand building activity within P&G. So trying to drive that awareness right through the organization and encourage people to take action is one of the biggest internal barriers, but I think we're making continued progress in that area. I think externally, it's one of the biggest surprises I've had is how many external barriers there are within this space. I mean, I think as an industry, there is still regulation within the BCAP code, so the code which we're all held to as advertisers, that makes it hard, honestly, to make advertising accessible to consumers. For example, any advert that has a long super at the bottom, so be it a finance advert or a automotive advert, where you've got to explain a lot of terms and conditions, or something that's going on the actual screen itself, is nearly impossible to audio describe, because based on the BCAP code, you actually have to describe every single word that is written on the screen. And so we need to drive change within some of our regulation in the industry to enable everything that we do to be more accessible to more consumers, because we're currently not set up right to do that. And then I think the space where we're seeing great progress, but there have been barriers in the past, is still within technology. The technology, particularly in the more let's say historic part of the industry, so particularly in linear TV and things like that, has been a barrier to bringing some of those accessibility features into the industry more quickly. And that's where we want to continue to work with many of our broadcast partners to make sure that we're doing all we can collectively as an industry to make ads more accessible to consumers going forward.
Okay, thank you, Matt. So Henrietta, one thing I was going to ask you, and I hope this isn't too much of a sort of controversial question, I'd just love to know your perspective on it. Matt was talking before about actively having to opt out versus opt in. Do you have conversations sort of agency side of saying, perhaps if you're getting a new client on board as part of that RFP, talking about your ways of working, have you ever had conversations about actually saying we will only work with advertisers who, from a mandatory perspective, ensure that all the advertising that they do is fully accessible? Because I understand some of the complications that Matt has talked through, but I just wonder if that's because, again, thinking about who's got the power to drive the change and the influence. I think if the brilliant creative agencies who are creating these ads say these are non-negotiables for us, we need to make sure that all the work that we are putting out is democratized and is accessible for everyone. And here are the simple steps that you can take, because ultimately, notwithstanding some of the points you were making, Matt, there are some really simple measures that can be taken. So is that something you've ever considered or discussed?
Yeah, it is, and it's something that we've considered a lot, and also thinking about making it mandatory across the industry as well. And I think that you do need to look at the entire industry as well, but if we're looking at the kind of, I guess, the progress journey, it's making these commitments, right? So you need commitments and you need an action plan to make the change. So it's about us talking about whether it's production. So every ad that comes out of A&B needs to be accessible, and not from just a platform perspective, but every part of the journey when creating a piece of work as well. There is also, it's looking at the actions that are going to make the biggest impact across these agencies, the media platforms, and the clients. And I think what we've seen is that the positive work coming out of the industry bodies like ISBA, like EACA as well, they've really helped drive these changes, and have really looked at providing the tools for our agencies and different agencies across the globe as well to start implementing this too. So there's lots that you can do at a lower level that, to be honest, you don't necessarily need to make a big song and dance to your clients. You can just do it, and it can just be part of your production process. It can just be part of the way that you do it. It's not going to make a difference. As Matt was saying, there aren't huge budget complications to action these or to do this. A lot of it is very kind of easy to do as well. So there's a number of things that we're already doing to make mandatory within our agency, and there's more that we're doing as well coming up.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Yeah, one thing I just want to add, and then just being mindful of time, I think I'll go to you all for a sort of a key takeaway. One thing, just again with my sort of previous advertising hat on, that struck me is, last month was Cannes Lions, big sort of global advertising festival. But what I personally, I just want to put out there that I think is that absolutely has to change is in inverted commas, the awards entry that needs to be submitted is often inherently inaccessible, because there is this idea of, craft And let's not have a voiceover. Let the visuals do the talking. It's this idea of stripping everything back. And I think that's pretty poor, because you are effectively saying that something beautiful, something that is worthy of winning a Cannes Lion, will ultimately not be able to be reviewed and appreciated and valued by nearly a quarter of the population, because you're inherently making it inaccessible by a group of people thinking that the only way it can be beautiful and award-winning is if all these accessibility necessities are stripped back. So that's my 2 cents there. Shani, you've got your hand up. You're so obedient.
Yeah, and also you're going to make it accessible to the judges as well.
Yeah, because their chances are.
Yeah, this year, Cannes did have disabled judges, and it's something that I supported them with to make it accessible. And this was a massive thing that came up. And I know we're going to go to key takeaways, but I also urge people to redefine their measure of success.
Yeah.
This industry puts out the most creative work possible. Accessibility is easy. And I think a new measure of success for everybody should be, if it's not accessible, this isn't a good piece of work. And we shouldn't see it as that either, being brutally honest.
No, I have to say, and that in and of itself is a beautiful creative challenge, in inverted commas. There is a real fabulous opportunity in there. And also just to build on Hen, you were talking before about the importance of storytelling. That sits at the heart of it. So why would we want to tell the same old stories over and over again? Let's bring in unique, diverse, interesting perspectives and tell those disruptive stories. So yeah, 100%. Okay. We have got, is my maths good enough? We've got 9 minutes left, so we may have some time for some questions in the end. But I'm going to go to you, Matt, and then you, Hen, and then you, Shani, to give people just a key takeaway, a piece of advice, perhaps something tangible, a simple step that they could take.
Sure thing. I mean, the biggest thing I'd say is you've just got to start. Like, honestly, you've got to start. And once you start, you've got to celebrate all of those little wins that you get along the way. And there will be tons, right? Especially early on, the opportunity is vast. But then remain constantly, healthily dissatisfied with the status quo, right? And find the people in the organization that are there, that are willing to help champion the cause with you, and you will make massive progress together. So just make a start, enjoy the wins, but remain dissatisfied.
Perfect. Like it. Thank you, Matt. Hen.
I think, I've been reflecting on this. I think for me, it's don't let the ambition of perfection slow you down. I think lean into what you do and what you love to create the change. Use that power of creativity to create the societal shifts, to make people feel outstandingly understood.
Yeah, it's lovely. Thank you. Shani.
I think what I would say is define your level of ambition with this work as well. Are you a brand or an agency that only wants to meet minimum compliance? Or do you want to go above and beyond that? It's good to know that. Hopefully, you want to go above and beyond that. And align this back to your organization's goals and the core purpose of your business as well, because there will be a massive need and want for accessibility to run through all of your business, and it's such a natural way that this would and fits in all your values and objectives to make it that non-negotiable business standard way of operating.
Yeah, thank you. Lovely. Okay, we do have, now I can't actually see any questions in the chat. Hopefully that's because it's just been such a fabulously fulfilling discussion that you feel you've got all the answers. But I'm worried that is just my tech challenges. Am I correct in thinking that there are no questions in the chat? Oh no, I've clicked on them. There are. I beg your pardon. We've got lots. How exciting! I was only looking at the questions for hosts and panelists, and we'd been asking our questions live. Here we go. Right, I'm going to start with Marsha Hutchinson. Thank you. You've asked two here. So this is a question for Matt. Is there somewhere we can see the ads that we can click on the option for audio description?
So absolutely, like depending on which TV channel you're watching, you can always turn on audio description as a kind of option when you start watching the TV, and then you will quickly see which ads are audio described and which are not. Transparently, as an industry, audio description is still the biggest outage. So there are still less than 20% of ads in the UK that are audio described. And that's something that we need to dramatically accelerate, which is why it's a big focus for us. So yeah, the number one way you can see is as it's an option on the remote to turn on audio description.
Brilliant, thank you. And Marsha has also said, can we also get links for the other advertisements that are getting it right? Yes, I will happily get your details, Marsha, and we can send through some examples as well. So thank you for asking that question. Priya Adams-Williams, perhaps I'll open this up to everybody. So the question from Priya is, when speaking to clients and brands, how do you recommend representing non-visible disabilities? A good question.
I'm happy to kick this off. This is a really common question that I get asked a lot, and I just want to set the scene to say that the majority of disabled people live with non-visible conditions and impairments. But I understand some of the creative challenges that there might be in depicting that. It's much easier, isn't it, to portray visible disabilities or ramps and wheelchairs, but actually wheelchair users are a minority in our community. So, understanding the nuances of the life of someone that lives with a non-visible condition or an impairment will quickly start giving us the answers. It could be equipment that they may have. It could be, something small like a fidget toy. It could be, they wear a stoma bag, so they're there in the background. It could be those really incidental things that are just there, or just on the table. There's lots of ways to do it, but firstly, the best way is just to understand the life of someone that lives with a non-visible condition or an impairment. It could be as simple as someone's wearing a hearing aid. There's loads of ways where we start thinking, but I'll hand it to my other panelists as well if they've got something to add.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think, it's things like using subtle cues that you might have in the background or in the foreground. So for example, it might be someone that's wearing dyslexia glasses and might be showing accessibility features on products, or someone using the accessibility features on a service. It might be, for example, showing somebody wearing a sunflower lanyard, for example, as well. But yeah, as Shani says, it's about understanding who you're representing and then understanding them fully and listening to their experiences so you can reflect that.
Yeah, I totally echo everything that's just been said. I mean, we talk a lot about, you've got to put the consumer at the heart of what you do, right? And so understanding the consumer is the starting point of that, and understanding how your brand or product can link back to, that issue as well is important. I think, if I could call out a piece of work that I think is done this brilliantly is actually one of our competitors from P&G. So it's the brand Vanish. I think the work that they did with autism, is a brilliant example of how you could bring to life a product benefit in a relevant way to a non-visible disability.
Yeah, that fantastic example. Thank you. Okay, so we've got 2 minutes left. I'm gonna take a punt and go for one last question. It's quite a biggie though, so it could be ambitious to answer in 2 minutes, but let's have a crack. So question here, do you notice that more advertising clients are quicker to say no to being inclusive of disabled people than they are for other, inverted commas, minority groups? If yes, why do you think that is? I'm just going to quickly put in the word intersectionality. I'm going to put that in there, but let's open up to the group.
I think it's much harder. Well, people think it's harder to depict disabled people. I've seen a lot of improvement of representation for different ethnicities, for example, but then I still don't see many disabled people of colour on screen. That's my take on this.
Yeah. Okay. Any input from you, Matt or Hen? We're very close on time, so don't.
I mean, I think as an advertiser, it's something that is always in the consideration of what we're trying to do. So I don't think it's harder. I think it's just how we find the most relevant and best way to do it, which links back to the product or brand benefit that you're trying to achieve.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, exactly right. Completely agree. And I think, unfortunately, even more so, disabled people are often the invisible customers, and this kind of lack of visibility is a huge problem for companies. And I think that the intuition of the person that's asking this question is right. It does tend to not be the minority group that most companies and most brands get asked or ask us to look and to represent for as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, sadly, guys, our time is up. But I want to say a massive thank you to Shani, Henrietta, and Matt. Thank you to Joanne for the human-generated captioning. Thank you to the fabulous team at the Valuable 500 for setting this up. And most importantly, thank you all so much for joining us. And we will respond to the rest of the questions in the link. But thank you all so much for joining us for this really important conversation. Thank you guys for sharing your fantastic insights. I really appreciate it. Right. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.